You are tuned into the Dr. Tina Show with Dr. Tina Moore. For more, visit drtyna.com. Sarah Kennedy, thank you so much for coming all the way to Arizona to be on the Dr. Tina Show.
I'm just absolutely delighted to be here. And wow, is it beautiful?
I love it. I'm so excited. So you came all the way from New Zealand, and we are going to talk about your latest clinical study results, and we're going to preview them on this podcast. So I'm so excited. You've been on before. We talked about Calocurb, and I thought it would be great if we could, before we lead to that study, let's talk about what Calocurb is and just kind of rehash a little bit of the science behind it and how it works, and then we'll lead into that.
Sure. So Calocurb, we call it, it's a natural GLP-1 activator. And what does that mean? We activate the release of 3 appetite-suppressing hormones, which are CCK, GLP-1, and PYY. But we don't just activate them, we activate them at 600% above base level. Now, why that's important is you don't get any behavioural change unless it's about 400%. So it came from science out of the New Zealand government. So in 2010, a group of very talented government scientists had a hypothesis that they would find a natural plant-based extract that stimulated these appetite-suppressing hormones. They applied and got a $20 million grant back. They did some incredible things with that, and really came out. They found the plant-based extract, which actually comes from a specific variety of hops. So yes, hops like in beer, but not hops. It's unisomerized versus isomerized. So I always sort of qualify that because guys always go, "Oh, can I drink beer and lose weight?" And I'd be like, no.
Hoppy beer is an estrogen tincture, very different beast.
Yeah. So it does come from hops, but it is an extract, so it has no estrogen or estrogenic effects. So that's all the biological matter is taken out. So, with the subsequent clinicals we showed that we got 40% reduction in craving, 30% reduction in hunger, and an average of an 18% reduction in calorie intake. And I always sort of equate that to people. It's kind of like a burger. If you think about a burger, it's about 200, 220 calories, that 18% on average. And if you compare it to semaglutide is about 24, 25% per day. So it has that equivalence. It's not, because you're not super saturating your body. And of course, we're stimulating your own hormones. We're not putting in a synthetic hormone. So 16 years now and 30 million in clinical research. We have Calocurb, the product.
Okay, so let's back up a little so everyone knows. So semaglutide is GLP-1 agonist, and it's bioidentical, and it is tweaked a little bit so that it has a longer half-life in the body, right? Because we make our own GLP-1, but that's in and out of our system very quickly. Calocurb is a different beast entirely. It's actually stimulating the L cells of the gut, which is where we make our own endogenous GLP-1, and it's also upregulating a couple other appetite-suppressing hormones or appetite-regulating hormones. So talk about those and what they do in the body too, so everyone has like a good baseline.
Well, they're just potent appetite-suppressing hormones, and they're not really talked about. So we are a triple satiety, but CCK is released really in the upper intestine, very short-acting but very potent. Why I love CCK and why endocrinologists love it is it squeezes the gallbladder as well.
Nice.
So you're not getting gallstones.
Yes, you're not getting the stasis that you would with a...
That's right. And then it goes down, and we'll talk about the CCK a little bit more when I tell you about the 4th human clinical.
Okay.
The GLP-1, obviously everyone knows that as appetite suppressing. It both goes to your brain and says, hey, you've had enough, stop eating, and it slows the stomach motility down so you feel full. And then PYY is a lovely lower that no one ever talks about. It's in the lower gut, and once again, it's an appetite-suppressing hormone. So we are a triple satiety releaser, and these are all clinically proven and published.
Right. And in some of those, maybe all of them in those 3 studies that you have just referred to, I believe that you were not regulating what they were eating, or were you? Or was it depending on the clinical 1, 2, or 3? I feel like they were given free rein to eat whatever they wanted in one of them?
Yeah, so in the first clinical, they were given Calocurb, which actually didn't even have a name then, an hour before an ad libitum lunch. They were given an hour before lunch, ad libitum lunch and snack, so eat to your full lunch.
Okay.
They measured all the blood so we could see the increase of these appetite-suppressing hormones, and then we could measure what they ate in their calories, and that was the 18%. So that was an ad libitum meal. The one we did in women, that was a 24-hour water-only fast.
That's right.
And we gave Calocurb at 16 hours and 20 hours, so the last 8 hours, which are the hardest of a fast or a water-only fast, and that's how we could show the reduction in craving and hunger.
Okay.
But we then gave an ad libitum meal at 24 hours and showed that they ate 14.5% less calories.
Wow, okay.
So that's after 24 hours of no food and 4 hours after they took their last Calocurb.
Okay.
So we know that. So
it was controlling appetite.
So what we knew, of course, that we stimulate the release, and I really want to say we super stimulate the release of your own appetite hormones, suppressing hormones. So nothing synthetic in there. This is a natural plant-based extract. So we knew we did that. We knew we reduced calories. We knew we had a great safety profile. However, what we knew anecdotally, but what we couldn't say, does that calorie reduction lead to long-term weight loss? So 3 years ago, I raised another $2 million, and we went into our fourth human clinical. And it was 150, it was a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled, 150 patients, men and women, between a BMI of 25 to 35, and they were either on Calocurb or not on Calocurb. They were on a placebo, though they didn't know the difference. And it was for 6 months, so 24 weeks with a 3-month follow-up on no treatment. The other thing I'd say, we call it real world, and the fact they have very low intervention. So they were only seen once a month. So they weren't given dietary, they weren't given exercise, they weren't given anything. So really what we would call a real world.
So they took the Calocurb or they did not. Gold standard study, decent size, decent duration, and you didn't intervene
at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's important.
So it was unblinded in November. You can imagine what I was like in November, because, I'd been saying for 2 years.
Explain what that means, though.
Oh, unblinded. So because it's randomized and controlled, you don't know who's getting the treatment and who's not.
Got it.
So the scientists don't know. So you just have this group, and so they don't know. And so when they unblind, they then can see who has been on the treatment or on the placebo. And of course, you don't know till then. And remember, this has taken, by the time we'd got through ethics and everything, this had taken over 2 years.
Oh my gosh, and $2 million.
$2 million. And I'd been saying, people say, what about weight loss? And we'd go, oh yeah, look, we're doing a long-term study. We know anecdotally. But of course, then the time came to unblind, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to say? Anyway, the results, as we talk about, are just, I'm over the moon. They're spectacular. So, in summary, we got, this is 24 weeks, remember, we got 5.4% weight loss. So we'll talk about that a bit more, and we can put that into, but 5.4%. It was all fat, concentrated on the abdominal fat.
Yep.
And so the ones, abdominal fat, the treated ones, lost 3.5 times more abdominal fat than the placebo. You'd be a bit pissed off, wouldn't you, if you were the placebo? And the big thing was they maintained their muscle. We had no muscle loss, so they preserved that. So weight loss, amazing. All fat, really focused in the abdominal, the stuff that we don't want.
In the visceral or in the subcutaneous abdominal?
Visceral.
Clarify. Yeah, that's important, because visceral fat's the bad
one.
Yeah.
And, it's what we get in menopause.
Yeah.
As we know, it all comes around the menobelly and that, and no muscle. So, how amazing was that?
Yeah.
I was just, and still are, over the moon. So you're going to get this weight loss where you need it to be in muscle and where you need it to be in the fat and not the muscle.
Yep, that's exciting. And when I met you guys, I had asked you, do you have any weight loss studies? And you said no, but they're coming. So this is it. It's been about 2 years since I met you. So a year and a half. So this is it. This is exciting. And last I talked to you, you were like, it's almost there. We just unblinded it, but I can't tell you yet.
So I'm thrilled with it. And then the other one, so that's gone in for public. Well, it's published. And then the next one to be written up. Remember, I said we did the 3-month follow-up.
Yes.
So that means 3 months of these people, they were off full treatment.
So they were not on
placebo,
either.
No placebo, no Calocurb. And the Calocurb group, the ones that have been on Calocurb, continued to lose weight.
Amazing.
And that's why I'm so excited, because we had always hypothesized that we have upregulated your receptors. So we're kind of improving your gut-brain axis.
Mm-hmm.
So, so you carry on losing this weight. So it's not as much, but you carry on.
So let's talk about that, because you and I have talked, you were the first person to really put me onto this, the idea, and it had been speculated, but then you showed me the data that when we use a GLP-1 agonist I think the study, the best one was on liraglutide, and they were using standard doses. And they found that after a course of time, people basically downregulated their natural GLP-1 production significantly when they were
zero.
Yes, when they were on this GLP-1 agonist. And so that's really concerning. And something we've talked about in the past on this podcast with you is that the Calocurb's doing exactly the opposite. It's essentially, I'm not trying to make claims here, but if I can put words to it, it seems to be healing the gut to some degree and healing that L cell production. So it's not just stimulating it the study's showing 3 months later, you're still getting results and that's why I say it might be having a healing impact, because I'll say it, you don't have to. Because theoretically, if you are having success while you're on the product and then you discontinue the product and you continue to have the same success, something has shifted in a positive way. And that's the exact opposite of what standard dosing GLP-1 is doing to people's guts.
Totally. Well, what I like to say is I think of these little L cells and like this, and we're kind of exercising them every day.
Mm-hmm.
And even our scientists say that. So, they sometimes look at me sideways when I say things, but they're saying that we are upregulating. So we're doing this. So this is able to prove that 3 months later. And I think what we're doing is reconnecting that gut-brain axis. Mm-hmm. And we know as we get older, the things we eat and that your L cell production does go down. So we are really reconnecting that. So I was thrilled with that result as well. And, I know with Calocurb, of course I'm going to say that I'm the founder, but I know with Calocurb, I take it nearly daily, but sometimes I don't. But I still have that real connection and the fact that I can eat and I'm like, oh, I'm full. Mm-hmm. And I think, I've been on it, 7 years and love it and use it for all sorts, for intermittent fasting, when I'm eating late or something like that.
Yeah.
So I can really feel it.
I think it's amazing. And people really need to understand this, because our L cell production, that was the whole hypothesis I had about microdosing, was that we potentially have a functional GLP-1 deficiency, which I have not been able to prove, because you guys have access to measuring GLP-1 levels, but we as physicians do not yet. The science isn't there. And so I think that people, every gut I've ever tested has been compromised. Mm-hmm. I was talking to my daughter about this yesterday, and I was explaining, dysbiosis, and she said, "What is that in like normal people terms?" And I said, "Well, it's leaky gut with pathological overgrowth of the wrong bugs, right? And we don't have the right bugs there, and we have the wrong bugs." I think the people we spend time with impacts our biome as well. And so if you're spending time with folks who are dealing with chronic diseases, we have studies showing that when these non-communicable diseases are indeed communicable. So it is my hypothesis that the L cells are being compromised just through daily living, the standard American diet, daily living, stress, toxins, hormones,
sleep,
stress. Stress is so huge. And then on top of that, we get atrophy of our gut lining as we age. So we know all of this. And so the idea that we could stimulate the L cells to actually kick back on into action mode and do something, this sort of solves the problem I was going for with my hypothesis, which was I was just trying to get people a little bit of GLP-1 back in them. My microdosing strategy got pretty much bastardized. And now people are standard dosing and calling it microdosing. And I'm saying like, no, that's 5 to 10 times more GLP-1 than I would ever prescribe for a true microdosing situation. And so I've been talking to my audience saying like, I feel like this meets the mark. If it works for people, if it works, it meets the mark for what I would say is a good thing to try for a microdosing strategy, because I was just hoping to get the L cells turned back on. I was hoping to get a little bit of GLP-1 back in the system. And then if we can get these other signaling peptide hormones going as well, like that's a huge win.
And, if it works for people, well, we know with our clinicals it does work, but, everyone is biologically different.
Yes.
And I think, people have to understand that. And we are a biologically active product where, we're not a supplement that you'll take. And I think it's good for me, but I'm not really going to feel anything. This is a biologically active product. So, we've talked about it in around up to 10% of people will have a laxative effect.
Yes, I'm one of them.
Okay.
I call it the purge.
Yeah, the first 24 to 48 hours, which is why we have an onboarding dosage.
Yes.
So, one a day for 2 days and so on like that for 5 days. But that is our onboarding. And you will know what dosage you are. And if you're 5% of people, you only might need 1 capsule or 125. And we actually call you a super taster, where we know in 5% of people, they have all of the taste receptors through their gut. So you have 1 to 25 on your tongue. 95% of people have 1 to 19 through their gut, but around 5% of people have 1 to 25. So we call them super tasters. You might only need 1 capsule. Mm-hmm. 90% of people, you're 2 capsules. It's just how your body...
Right.
Thing. It's interesting though, because, I've been traveling a lot lately, and I take my Calocurb not only to, help me be full, but, in and out of it, but for that laxative effect when you're traveling. So
that's a good point. That's a really good point. And, for me, I shared off camera here that I had a really profound shift in my microbiome with it. I did not test, so this is not scientific, but just I know my gut really well, and I have a persnickety gut, and I take it, it gives me the purge, and then my gut feels so much better. Truly. Yeah. And I was dealing with some pretty bad post-antibiotic symptoms in December, and I messaged you in New Zealand, and I was like, do you have any data on this? And we have studies showing that GLP-1 agonists shift the microbiome, totally. The gut microbiome. So that when you're upregulating those signaling peptide hormones, you've got to be inducing some kind of shift, and hopefully towards a more favorable microbiome. I know you don't have studies on that, but I'm just speculating. That's how it felt for me.
Certainly we can. The interesting one that people, because we are literally small capsules, 100% vegetarian, literally 3 ingredients: a vegetable oil, the amaracate or the hop extract, and a tiny amount of rosemary, which acts as a preservative. So 3 of that. And people say to me, wow, what about now you've got oral GLP-1s? Well,
let's talk about that.
Yeah, well, look, there's nothing wrong with these drugs. But remember, when you take an oral, they're incredibly high dosage.
Yes.
So if you start on, say, a semaglutide at 2.5 milligrams, that's an injectable, you're taking 25 milligrams in a capsule, in a pill, right? And the reason for that is it's got to dissolve in your stomach, and it's got to be absorbed in the bloodstream. So it's got to be a very, very high level. So you're putting 10 times the amount. So you're really putting a lot in, and its coating is called SNAC. Don't ask me, it's a long name what it's called, but it's called SNAC. And that is really known to affect the microbiome. So
the coating of the oral prescription.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's got to break down and it's got to help it absorb.
Right.
And what I'm saying is, look, absolutely fine. But what it's doing, you're still getting the same side effects, up to 70% side effects, because you're not reducing the dosage. You're still getting muscle loss. So you're going to lose weight, but up to 40% will be muscle loss. And all you're doing is avoiding the ejection. So, and people go, well, you're a capsule too. And I'm like, look, the big thing is we've talked about is these people are still going to want to come off at some stage. And their own natural GLP-1 has been reduced to zero, which is why you get this weight regain.
So I do want to clarify on the muscle loss, only because I have been knee deep in the studies on that. And the most recent, well, first of all, that 40% number is lean mass loss, and muscle's only about 50% of lean mass. So there's that, but also there's different studies coming out showing, which I was really excited about. My other part of my hypothesis was that lean mass loss was actually probably the fatty infiltrate in the muscle and in the liver. And there's at least a mouse study that came out recently in Cell Biology, and it showed that the loss was the majority of the loss, far more than the lean skeletal muscle, was the liver size and weight. So that's really exciting. And that's totally off topic. I just wanted to clarify.
No,
because
but that's good. It is lean body mass.
Because it's something I've really been in deep on, because that 40% number gets thrown around, and it's not incorrect completely. It is lean mass loss, but I think it really depends, because we're talking about a group of people who traditionally have very pathologic muscle. Yes. And with Calocurb, I'm trying to have a different conversation with people. The GLP-1 use, and I really want people to hear this, because in folks who are truly type 2 diabetic and truly significantly obese, their muscle tissue itself is so pathologic and so infiltrated with fatty infiltrate, and it is such a pro-inflammatory state. Yes. And then with Calocurb, I think of more a lot of the women who follow me, which is just that we're that middle-aged women. Suddenly we got the belly fat, and that visceral fat is so sensitive now. I've always had a visceral fat problem, but it is so damn sensitive to my stress levels, to any amount of alcohol. Like now I gained 15 pounds. I was in Oregon. You guys were so sweet. You sent me flowers. Thank you. My mom was so sick, and I was so stressed out of my mind. I still have PTSD from the whole thing. And I put 15 pounds on like that.
Oh, wow.
I came home and it was all right here. And it was not subcutaneous belly fat. It was like my gut, I had a gut, and it was that visceral fat, and it was that response to cortisol. And then
absolutely.
Any little bit of carbohydrate or any little bit of alcohol, and so Calocurb is something that I think is so, for me, it's been so great for that. So I immediately started on the Calocurb when I got home. I immediately was like, okay, I gotta dial this back in. I gotta get my shit together.
You told me that.
Things were out of control, but I just think that that's really exciting that your clinical study showed no muscle loss, and specifically targeting that visceral fat. Because I think women, I want the audience to really hear this. I don't think women are, and I really don't think a lot of the scientists out there are appreciating this, that it's not just that we tend to gain more visceral fat in menopause. I really believe it's more sensitive. I think people need to start studying I think the sensitivity of women's visceral fat just really turns on in those middle age years. So to have this tool that I have in a bottle that I can, and it was so funny. I was in Oregon and I didn't have any Calocurb, and I thought multiple times, I knew you guys would ship me a bottle, but I didn't know how long I was going to be there, and I didn't want it to sit on the porch. And so I was like, I need my damn Calocurb because this is getting out of control.
Well, it's funny you say that. I think I don't know where, I was away somewhere and I didn't have my Calocurb. And I'm going to my colleague with me, Louise, give me some Calocurb, give me some Calocurb. So you're right, we used to laugh and say gin was mummy's little helper. Now I say Calocurb's mummy's little helper.
Well, it's true. It's portable, it's easy, it's well tolerated. As long as I have a day to go through that purge, I know it's coming, I know that first 24 hours. But my husband loves it. I just sent him out the door this morning for a 2-week trip back to the farm, and he really didn't want me to shoot him up with any GLP-1. And I said, okay. So I gave him some Calocurb because it was time. We cycle through these, and it was time. And I was like, well, here's 2 packets of Calocurb, take that with you. And he loves it. He responds so well to it. He has such a quick, I told you the story in the last podcast. He had some dental work done. He had teeth extracted, some root canals extracted actually. And he couldn't eat anything hard for several weeks, and his appetite was severely blunted. And I was like, is that the tooth extraction? Yeah. Was that the root canal extraction? And he's like, yeah, it's just amazing. And he loses a bunch of weight and he looks amazing. And then all of a sudden I come out to the kitchen and there's the Calocurb bottle upside down. He turns bottles upside down. That's our signal that he needs it replaced. Then I have to go to the stash and, get the replacement. And there's a Calocurb bottle turned upside down. I'm like, have you been taking this the whole time? He goes, well, yeah, you told me to. I go, well, no wonder your appetite was suppressed and you lost all this weight. I'm sure the tooth extraction injection helped for sure, but like, and getting that inflammation out of the body and that infection, but like, here's an empty bottle of Calocurb. So I said, how are you doing it? He goes, well, I was just doing 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, like you told me. And I was like, okay, that explains everything. So
that's brilliant. And guys, I do find, well, women are very good on it, but I find it with guys because they don't tend to overthink food as much as women do. Like, oh, when am I going to eat next? What am I going to eat? So on like that. They're like, I take 2 tablets. I'm not happy. I'm not hungry.
Yeah.
I don't eat. The other thing, if they get a slight reflux, it'll be like a beer burp.
Yeah.
They can taste the hops and you're like, oh, I like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is, they just don't overthink it as much.
Yeah. Men are simple and easy. No, he responds beautifully to it. I don't have as strong of a response to it as he does, but he'll just drop 5-10 pounds like that with a bottle of Calocurb.
It's amazing.
He's telling he's like literally got his whole family. He's like, y'all need Calocurb. Here's Tina's link. Everybody buy it. And everyone who comes to him and starts asking him about GLP-1s, because they know he's my husband, and they'll start asking questions. And he doesn't want to send them to me because I don't want to get inundated by strangers' questions. And so he just tells them all to go buy Calocurb. And it makes sense. Like, try that first.
Yeah.
And see how it goes. I think in the grand scheme of things, looking at this is the other part we have to touch on. I don't know if you guys have kept up with it, but the FDA is cracking down hard on compounded GLP-1s and pretty hard on the research peptide side of things too. I think they're coming from both sides.
Yes, they are.
And I just did a podcast about it. Like, I really encourage physicians, if your practice is really leveraged on these compounded GLP-1s, like, the day of reckoning is coming and people need to shift. And the only options out there right now that I think are really safe and also effective, I really think the brand name GLP-1s are working better than the compounded at this point. But because who knows what's coming out of China, and the whole industry just got so crazy. So really the only way to get a GLP-1 at this point in a vial form is to go through Eli Lilly.
Yes.
And you have to buy the brand name, and you're looking at $450 to $700 a month at least. And so that's it. I mean, that's the days of getting, the $100 vials of compounded are soon to be over, if not over already. The 3 big 503B compounding pharmacies have all, from what I've heard, have all 3 discontinued compounding. So it's falling on the 503As, which I don't think is going to be able to keep up by any means. And so this is a simple solution that maybe is not a replacement by any means, but I think it's worth trying, especially for those gals out there who are like microdosing for inflammation, but really they're doing it for a little bit of weight loss.
Well, I think
no shame in that.
I think there's 2 ways. I think Calocurb certainly is an alternative. It's an alternative if you can't take the side effects. And remember, some people, those side effects are quite high and they can't afford it.
Yeah.
Right? And you don't want to take a pharmaceutical. It's a great alternative. And you just want to it just helps you in everyday life because you feel full faster. That's basically what you say. So you just don't need to eat as much. I say, and I will continue to say this, it's not an if, it's a must when you come off the GLP-1 agonists,
let's talk
the
about
pharmaceuticals. Because remember, we talked about you have depressed your own endogenous appetite-suppressing hormones down to 0. Right? So you come off, and this is why you get this intense, insane hunger.
Yeah, the rebound.
So we act as this wonderful safety net when you come off, where we work with the body, we're super stimulating. Once again, we're helping restore that gut-brain axis. And we know over 90%, 95% of people will regain the weight, and they do it almost 2 to 3 times faster than they would have lost weight just on diet alone. So, and personally, I think a lot of it is to do with that hunger.
Oh yeah, and they suppressed everything in their L cells. It's scary that it's actually the most recent study that came out on weight regain. I did a podcast about it. It's the newer generation GLP-1s. The faster and
that's it.
harder they work, the faster and harder the weight regain.
Totally.
And so retatrutide's going to be a mess.
I couldn't agree with you more. So I absolutely the same. So, semi, yes, they do them. And then tirzepatide, more, and then retatricide is going to be even faster. And so we act as that safety net, natural, getting the gut-brain axis working again. And I just say it's not an if, it's a must. If you don't want to put that weight back on again, you've done a lot of hard work, and then I just love the graphs that we show when we superstimulate your hormones. We work on exactly the same hormonal pattern as your body. We're just doubling the amount. So you don't have high GLP-1 when you're asleep. You don't need high GLP-1 unless you're a sleepwalker and you eat them in your sleep. You don't need it then. You need it, to prior to when you're going to eat. And also you need to learn you've got to put some of these habits in place about eating, about taking,
Yes.
the time. In fact, a woman did a wonderful testimonial for us the other day. She's like, because everyone's like, oh, I forget to take it an hour or an hour and a half before a meal. She said, because of that, I had to really think about my meals and start to put in habits.
Yes.
To do this.
Yep.
So I wouldn't snack endlessly. So it's not stopped my snacking and also made me think about those meal times.
Yep.
So I thought that was actually really interesting.
Same. It makes me really think about food sourcing and what my plan is for the day.
But what your plan is for the day.
Yeah.
And, I will say, we always say it's to take it on an empty stomach because we want it to go through the stomach and then it releases basically in the upper intestine. So the only thing is if you have a full stomach, it's we don't want it to release. It's not going to do any harm, but it's not going to be as effective. So we want it to release. So like when I intermittent fast, I take mine at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning and I don't eat for 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours later. And what I'm just doing is trying to reduce my hunger. So I won't, I can walk past that muffin. I can walk past those things like that. So it really is take it on an empty stomach, take it with a large glass of water. And the reason being is we want it to go through your stomach. It isn't a delayed release capsule. Get to your upper gut or your upper intestine where it'll release. And the other thing people say to me is, you release, your natural GLP-1, but, that only lasts for 2 to 4 minutes in your body. But what Calocurb's doing, I kind of think of it like a pinball. It's going down through your intestine and it's banging against those L cells. And so it's releasing all the way down. And because of its component, its very bitter component, it's getting this sustained release as well as it goes down. So, yes, it is your own natural GLP-1, but we're literally stimulating it all the way down.
All the way down. So there's 2 applications I think of that we've talked about before, and one would be titrating off your GLP-1, or if you're cycling it, you can use this in the interim, or you can use it when you're coming off so that you don't get that regain or rebound of the appetite. And then 2, I've been telling folks to try it with their GLP-1.
Totally.
Because perhaps I'm such a huge fan of keeping that dose super low. I'm no shame if you need a higher dose of a GLP-1 to move the needle, but the higher we go with that, in my head, this is an orchestra. All of these signaling peptide hormones are an orchestra. And if we start cranking on one lever really, really hard, or think of it like a spider web, right? If you start pulling on one side, the whole thing becomes misshapen. And I think the repercussions for the folks who've been on high doses, I've got folks messaging me saying they're on the highest dose and they're not losing weight anymore. And in fact, the weight's coming back on, their appetite's returning. This is something to potentially consider. Talk to your doctor, of course. This is not medical advice, but consider using it adjunctively along with the GLP-1. Or also for me, I don't even want to get to standard starting dose of a GLP-1. And I have found, truthfully, as I have cycled it on and off, when I go back on, I need a little bit more than when I first started with GLP-1. I could just take a droplet and it was so powerful. And now I find myself needing a little bit more with each cycle to get the same results. And so this is a wonderful way for me to keep that really low. And it has worked that way for me, at least. I have been able to keep my GLP-1 dose because I am using it for autoimmune disease and inflammation. Yes. And I'm just in that age where we've all been through it as women, and whether they know it or not, it's like one day your labs are beautiful and the next day your labs are a shit show because you're hitting menopause. And even with the HRT and even with all the best efforts, things were going awry. And when I go on a GLP-1, it all regulates out.
Yes.
So I do use a little bit of the injectable. I love tirzepatide personally, but everybody's different. And my husband prefers semaglutide for various reasons, but we can use that Calocurb adjunctively.
Oh, totally. And that's where you can use it because you can lower the dose right down, lower the side effects, lower the cost. And of course, what you're doing is you're keeping stimulating your own natural hormones. So when you come off that cycle, they're going to be, they're going to be stimulated. So totally alternative in combination, and then certainly as coming off. I always say that. And, as I said to you now, with this latest clinical, it's fantastic. We know the CCK is helping stimulate that fat loss or fat oxidation, and the PYY is helping that muscle stimulation.
Yep.
And I remember talking to the scientist going, wow, these results are incredible. I never expected this. And he goes, oh, I could have told you it's going to be like that. And I'm like, why didn't you? I had 2 years. I had 2 years waiting for this.
Because we need proof, because the world always needs proof. And then you were saying that those results are maintained 3 months later still with follow-up. So it's doing something good in the gut, and those results are lingering at least up to 90 days. So that's huge.
Well, up to 90 days, because that's what we measured. And people say, well, why didn't you do longer? Well, it cost $2 million. So, it's going to be like, no. But we're absolutely thrilled. And and we just obviously 90% of our sales are in the US, and we're just keeping promoting that for everyone.
I don't think people knew it existed. And honestly, when I first heard about it, I was like, because I had just come out on the podcast scene talking about microdosing GLP-1s, and I got inundated. I to this day get inundated. There's not a week that goes by that some company doesn't reach out to me and say, hey, we've got this GLP-1 product. And often it's some like crappy shake with bad ingredients and pea protein, and they want to sell it. It's like the adjunctive meal replacement that you take along with. And I'm like, just take a good quality protein powder, But then there's legitimate companies selling Akkermansia, which yes, that's great. And Akkermansia is known to stimulate GLP-1, but GLP-1 production.
You've never actually measured it.
Yeah, and didn't you? So we can talk about that or not, but I think that when you stimulate GLP-1, you shift the microbiome in a favorable way, which would promote Akkermansia sticking around. It's like a chicken and egg situation. It does. So when I actually learned how Calocurb worked, I was like, oh my gosh, I felt like such a fool for blowing it off, because I did. I blew it off. I was like, whatever, just another GLP-1 product. But it's not. It's a literal GLP-1 activator.
Well, 16 years. 30 million. And they're like, well, why haven't I heard of you before? I will tell you that Novo Nordisk spent $1 billion in 1 year, when they launched Wegovy. They took up to lunch and dinner 239,000 practitioners. And now Nova spends $45 million a month, and Eli Lilly spends around $50 million a month. So, we will
getting the word out.
Getting the word out. So we're doing it, and we are working, as you know. I was in America, we had 10 trips to America last year.
From New Zealand.
Yeah.
You guys are, I don't know how you guys do it. And every time I see you both, you're both so thin. And I'm like, that's because they're taking Calocurb. If I traveled that much, I just blow up.
Well, once again, it's really good for travel. But you would laugh, because I think about it. We fly in New Zealand, and it's no plug for Air New Zealand, but it's just the best routes for us. And we now know the air hostess, and they're like, oh, hi. Hi.
You got some Calocurb? You guys are like little fairies, little Calocurb fairies. No, it's really phenomenal. And I have been using it for, gosh, I don't know, going on 2 years now. And again, like I said, my husband is my guinea pig. He responds so beautifully to everything, and he's super compliant. He'll just take whatever.
Oh, I love
if
it.
I put it in the cupboard and I put the dosage on with a Sharpie on the lid, he consumes it. And so anything I want to trial run, and I have such a sensitive gut, so I'll trial run everything on him. And if he comes back and he's like, I love this, then
you know it's good.
Yeah, I'll work with the brand on that.
Amazing.
Because I can't guinea pig myself on everything. I'm too sensitive.
So, the thing is, we've finished this 4th human clinical now, but we have a very comprehensive science plan going forward. We have 4 values in our company. The first value is science-led. So everything we do, must be led by science. Still, a small part of us is owned by the New Zealand government, so we have to do absolutely everything correctly. And the second one is customer success, because without them being successful, it's not going to work. So the science plan is really exciting. We're sort of looking across groups. We'll do another clinical in menopause. We have done one in women, but we're going to do it in menopause or postmenopausal women. One in adolescents. So we know 1 in 4 adolescents are overweight. And, I think the GLP-1 agonist drugs are amazing, but do you want to start them on that when they're very young?
That's a rough, keep going. We'll come back to that because that's a topic.
So, adolescents, postmenopausal. And then the other one we're doing, which is deep dive, is we just, on the mechanism of Calocurb, we know that it produces GLP-2. So we're measuring that. And we want to do, so we've got a really comprehensive, at least a 24 to 36 month science plan.
I love it. This is so exciting. I think this is brilliant for consideration with the youth, because I was just talking to a friend of mine. Something nobody talks about is that when a fetus is inside a metabolically compromised mother and or an obese mother, the epigenetics of that outcome are rough. That kid is basically flagged for obesity and metabolic dysfunction. It's almost a guarantee.
Yes.
And nobody wants to talk about this. And I'm not shaming anyone. I had my own metabolic dysfunction when I was like one of the skinny PCOS girls.
Yeah.
I was always one of those girls that nobody thought anything was wrong with, but I had severe metabolic dysfunction, even though I was this big around. And weight has been a challenge for my daughter. Like I definitely flagged my daughter, and it has, her body does not respond the way mine does to things. And I come from a long line of obese family members. I'm like the token thin one.
Yeah.
And so I was just talking to a friend of mine who, her teenage daughter is considering using a GLP-1. This girl works out all the time. Yep. She's super conscientious about what she eats, but she struggles. And I think she's always going to struggle. And so I had a hard conversation with my friend, and I said, I think finding a way to stimulate GLP-1 is going to be a lifelong issue for her.
Absolutely.
Because I remember this little girl when she was 6 years old, and she had such a carbohydrate addiction to the point where I remember her crying because we would not give her any more snacks. And she's always...
It's a genetic.
It's an uphill battle.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating when people say, how dare we even consider these medications for kids, or how dare we consider intervening? It's just, and I'm like, do you understand the uphill? Not only that, but we're talking about the fact that they live with the parents who themselves often tend to be in that situation. And then they're feeding the kids, and it's a family matter. It requires a really comprehensive family integrative approach. And that's just not feasible in most cases. And so we're not handing out GLP-1s to children, but I'm certainly not. But even if you read the American Pediatric Association stance, there was a gentleman going around the internet saying that we're giving GLP-1s to 6-year-olds. That's bullshit.
It is.
There was a study done on, I think, down to 12 or 14 years old, and then even maybe 6 years old on liraglutide, but they never approved it. Those guidelines, the pediatric guidelines, are down to, I think, 14 years old, maybe 12 or 14.
12.
And it's the last line.
Yes.
All they did was say, you can consider pharmacologics, not even necessarily GLP-1s, but it said extreme family intervention, diet and lifestyle. And when that doesn't work, we are now approving that you just, and that could be metformin, that could be,
absolutely.
It's just consider pharmacologic intervention. But this is something that might be a really wonderful tool for parents who are dealing with children. Because I get messages from those folks all the time, and they're like, what about GLP-1s for kids? And I'm like, I'm not going to answer you because I'm not a pediatrician and I'm not your doctor. But I do think this is worth talking to your pediatrician about, not necessarily injecting a GLP-1, because that's going to be a lifelong commitment, but something like this.
Look, absolutely, and this is why we're doing the study in it. But, it's interesting, and I was really feeling for that teenager now. I think I said to you, a founder usually always has a story. I struggled my whole life with food and weight. Never been incredibly overweight, but struggled with it. This love-hate relationship. Yeah. I was on my first diet when I was 11. So, and this love-hate my whole life. And as I said, Calocurb, of course, when I first saw when it was presented to me, and that was 2017, I had never seen that amount of science behind something or an extractor in this bigger category. And I started taking it then. And I can completely say to you now, I'm relaxed with food. I'm now peaceful with it. I don't have this love-hate relationship.
Right.
So I myself, it absolutely is my helper. And it's not like, I want to eat, I've got to eat, what am I going to eat? And all of that I have struggled with my whole life. And that yo-yo and diets, we've all been on, all of these diets, and now I don't have to. You've got to consider what you eat and do all of that. But I'm not doing this. I just don't eat as much.
Yeah,
That's it.
The noise in the brain is...
The noise is massive.
The other part of that, I was the opposite. I was always anorexic and bulimic. And I was super good at food restriction. That was how I tried to control my life, because I was, life was out of control for me as a teenager. And I think that, well, the amount of messages I've gotten from people telling me that they were anorexic and bulimic and taking a GLP-1 microdose cured the problem. So I think the way that these signaling peptide hormones are working in the brain, it's both sides.
Yes.
The folks who are under-eating and the folks who are overeating, it's regulating something for both sides.
Yes.
And so I think, again, this is a potential tool for folks who are struggling. So my struggle around food was just absolute aversion, whereas now I can induce an appetite. And it's funny, when I take either Calocurb or a GLP-1 and I put on a continuous glucose monitor, normally my blood sugar is really, really, really low. Mm-hmm. I can't use one of the versions because it goes off all the time. The beeper's always in the dangerous zone. And when I use GLP-1 or Calocurb, I actually go into the mid zone.
Yeah.
So it's both sides, right?
Yes.
It's not just the folks who can't stop eating. It's the folks over here like myself who kind of, I think I broke my metabolism a little bit through all of that under eating all those years. And so GLP-1s have really helped me there. And I've gotten lots of messages from people telling me the same. And there's even data coming out on that now. So, and its impacts on, it really needs to be studied further. Its impacts on eating, dysregulated eating, disordered eating.
Absolutely, on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And as teenagers with the anorexia and so on like that, it is control. And suddenly you don't, it's that mental exercise is control. And what it's doing is actually taking that noise out of your brain, whether it's food noise or control noise, it's actually helping in that. So, so it is, you can, and then you're not always punishing yourself by this yo-yo dieting or yo-yo this eating uncontrolled and then purging uncontrolled, because you literally can't eat that much.
No, something's wrong in the brain in the cases of anorexia and bulimia.
Yes.
So I know I lived it. Something is wrong there. And the GLP-1 normalizes that for me.
Yes.
I don't even think about, because when I get upset, the first thing I do is think I'm just going to starve myself. It's so weird. It's like my default mode. And I don't even think about that when I have adequate GLP-1 in my body. That is why I think there's functional GLP-1 issues going on with people.
Yep.
And then I think the other side of that is we really have to understand that. I mean, forget the debate whether obesity is a disease or not. I truly believe it is. But like you said, you've never really had like huge weight issues so much as just this food that has to be honored. Something is going on in the brain, and we're missing GLP-1's made in the brain. So I'm sure they're going to find out a lot of other things, not just in the gut. And what's made in the gut crosses the blood-brain barrier. Something's going on there that really needs to be studied, because why else would people not want to drink as much or smoke as much, or the opioid? I mean, the studies coming out are really exciting.
Well, the hunger center is right next to the addictive center, and it's in the hindbrain. And this is what I always say to people: it's in your hypothalamus. It sits in that hindbrain, and they sit there. And this is why I think it's so exciting now that we now so many people are educated. It's not just willpower and eat less. It is a physiological mechanism in your body. And I always say, which was during evolution to make us go out and hunt.
Yes.
I tell people that if you reduce your calories by 25%, your hunger will double. So your ghrelin will double over 4 months. And that was the way that made us go out and hunt.
Yes.
So
we didn't die.
We didn't die. We didn't just lie in our caves going, oh, you know what? It's raining.
Yeah.
So I just think it's so incredible that we now can say, hey, it is it's physiological, it is genetic, it is environmental. There are so many things. It's not just willpower and eat less. And that, I think, is just fantastic. And all of these things coming out, but it's just how you manage it. And again, so you've got your hindbrain, as I say, there's your hindbrain, and then we've got a forebrain, and there's your forebrain going, no, you don't need to eat that, you're on a diet. Well, you put hormones, we've talked about hormones, you put women.
Cortisol.
Yeah, stress, lack of sleep, alcohol, and that just falls off. I say to people, women during their menstrual cycle, in their luteal cycle, which is called PMS, will eat on average 200 calories more a day and up to 600 calories. Now that is normal because your body's saying, eat more. You may be implanting this egg.
Yeah.
You're going to need that energy. But of course, so that's the hormones. And that's in that forebrain, and that's telling you to eat. So it's not just, as I said, I can help your hunger, but I can't help your mood.
Right.
You're still going to want to rip someone's head off. But so we're literally these multiple pathways in our body, this physiology. And thank God we're now learning more about that.
Yeah, I think we can have grace for people instead of just penalizing them for not having enough willpower. Because when I was going through that with my mom, my appetite went through the roof. And I have always been a low appetite girl. I've always been this sort of anorexic, like don't eat girl. And here I was just eating literally anything and everything. I was so stressed out. And I that's where all the weight gain came from. And then you mix it with the cortisol, and that cocktail in your body is like, hey, visceral fat, woo, and it was just, after that experience just recently, I have a whole new empathy.
Appreciation, yeah.
Because, oh my gosh, that was just such a coupled disaster. And the whole time I'm like, I wish I had my Calocurb. I'm stuck in Oregon and I don't have it. So, okay, well, I think I'm really excited. I'm so excited that you guys keep running really high quality studies.
Thank you.
And I'm honored you're my friend, and I'm so grateful you came out here. So thank you for educating us, and I hope that everybody will check it out. If you guys head to calocurb.com/drtyna, you get a great discount if you put in the code drtyna. And I will keep beating the drum on this because I think it's such an amazing tool, and I think it checks off the boxes, right? Like it potentially scratches that itch for folks who want to try microdosing. It may or may not be the thing, but I have found it to be, for some people, I get messages back from people saying like, that really did it. I think it's a great offboarding tool. If you're coming down off of a GLP-1, it's a wonderful tapering tool. And then I think it's a great tool to take adjunctively if you want to keep your GLP-1 production going while you're on a GLP-1.
Yeah, totally. And just, our vision is just to help people in everyday life.
Yeah.
So we've never just talked about weight. I'm just helping you. We are surrounded by food all day. We are surrounded by it. I'm just trying to help you make better choices.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much. I honestly loved coming here. What a beautiful part of the world.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Dr. Tina Show. This is a Wellness Loud production produced by Drake Peterson. Theme song is by John the Guilt. You can watch the full video version of this podcast inside the Spotify app or on YouTube. As always, you can email the podcast at podcast@drtyna.com. That's DRTYNA. And if you like this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. You can also find all of my offerings on my website at drtyna.com. For more shows by my team, go to wellnessloud.com. See you next time, and thanks for listening. This podcast is for general informational purposes only. It does not constitute the practices of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. I am a doctor, but I am not your doctor. No doctor-patient relationship is formed. The use of this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content on this podcast is intended not to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.